Why do we create? For nearly every one of us, creating something is the most satisfying feeling in our existence. Every single moment, someone somewhere creates something that means the world to them. Everything you see and everything you are was created by something. Whether you believe it was a divine creator, the processes of natural laws, or some combination of the two, we all agree that something has created this universe that we are made of. So what exactly is happening when we create something? We may not be creating new matter or new energy, but both matter and energy are needed to create a thought, and a simple thought can inspire a creation that changes the world. It's not always thought of this way, but we are all parts of the universe, taking part and combining its materials into new and previously unimaginable things. When we create, we inspire others to create, and their creations inspire more creations. But if we're all a part of the universe, then doesn't this chain reaction show us that the universe is creating itself? Through consciousness, tiny parts of the universe have managed to create new things and connect new ideas. Every day, information becomes easier to seek and obtain, and oftentimes finding the answers only leaves us with more questions. With every answer, we become a tiny step closer to knowing everything the universe has to offer. It could be that the universe is seeking a way to understand itself, and if so, there's something we can do to help.
Create the creators.
What is creativity exactly? Where does it come from? Throughout history, our understanding of the origin of creativity has changed quite a bit. Ancient Greece produced some of the most detailed and intricate artwork of ancient times, yet they had no term for creativity itself. Their word for art was techne, which is where we get the word technique. It referred to something that was made according to a set of laws or rules. No word existed to describe the idea of boundless creativity. The closest equivalent word pien meant to make, and was similar to the word piesis, meaning poetry. So how come the Greeks didn't have a word to describe making something new out of nothing? They believed that things like art, music, or invention were the result of someone discovering an idea that already existed within nature. The famous philosopher Plato expresses his view on this in a manuscript known as the Republic, asking, "Will we say of a painter that he makes something? Certainly not, he merely imitates." However, Aristotle, one of Plato's most famous students, had a very different view on creativity. He believed that what a painter imitates is the ideal essence of his subject. According to Aristotle, art completes what nature cannot bring to finish. The artist gives us knowledge of nature's unrealized ends. Meaning, instead of painting a sunset, a painter paints his idea of the ideal sunset, even if nature did not provide it. Of course, Plato would look at this and say that even the idea of the most perfect sunset ever is already in existence within the natural laws of the universe. And you're a part of that universe, so if you thought of a perfect sunset, did it already exist? With two of the world's greatest philosophers in disagreement as to where creativity comes from, it's easy to see why the famous psychologist Carl Jung once said, "The creative act will forever elude human understanding." But moving forward in time to the days of the Roman Empire during the rise of Christianity, the word creatio in Latin was used specifically to refer to God's act of creation from nothing. The word facere, meaning to make, was used to describe things created by man. The word creatio became the root of the word we now know as creation, but at the time its purpose was to explain what man could not do. The Roman official and writer known as Cassiodorus wrote, "Things made and created differ, for we can make who cannot create." Following this notion, much of the artwork in medieval times was created as representation of biblical scenes or events. Since it was believed that God was the only force capable of creation, many works of art were inspired by the acts of God described in the Bible. The idea of creativity made one more major shift in the Renaissance, when artists began to believe in individual artistic freedom and the ability for man to create new ideas. It seems like one good question to ask would be, does the artist add anything to their materials to create a work of art? Or do they do as Michelangelo described? chipping away the excess from a block of marble in order to reveal the art that was already there. To find the answers to creativity's origins, we first have to ask ourselves, are we actually creating anything? Or are we just discovering something that was somehow already there?
In a sense, I almost feel as if every idea that could ever possibly be thought of has already been thought of, and it's there. It's not like we're thinking of it currently, but it's there. And it just takes the right person to be aligned with the right energy to reach out and take that inspiration, that creativity, that idea.
I think I heard the singer of Radiohead say once that like they don't write music, they find music, and I can definitely see what he would mean by saying that. Because sometimes like I'll finish a song and it just feels like not like it was originating up in here. It's like I was just kind of finding a little path to follow.
What I think it is that we actually have this sixth sense, or whatever you want to call it, where we're able to, through the ether, communicate, and we just haven't figured out what that is yet or how that works. There's a lot of stuff that we haven't figured out yet. We always think that we know everything, but we really know nothing. We know so little, it's amazing.
Am I just mimicking what's already out there, or am I creating something from new? I would say almost kind of both. I'm trying to create something to access a feeling that everyone has some way. So, but if I were to create something that had no framework for someone to look at it and go, oh, okay, or what the hell? You know, you see this beautiful landscape, like, okay, how can I use my technical skill to capture this moment and to show it in a very interesting way? So it kind of goes back to the cliche analogy of photography. You know, they say a photograph's worth 1,000 words. Okay, let's be lazy and say 10 words. What would be 10 words I would want someone to use to describe this? So what can I do with the knowledge I have to do that?
For many creators, the experience of creating seems oddly similar to making a discovery. If creative motivations and ideas are out there in the universe for us to draw from, what are they a part of? Could creativity be a direct act of God, a means for humans to perform God's will as was thought in medieval times? Or could creative energy actually be a part of some higher consciousness? Could this be God's energy?
Well, what does the word create mean? I mean, if you take it all the way back to the biblical sense, right? The creator. There was nothing and now there is something.
That's just a huge magnitude for anything to create the earth. And then we use that term when we make a piece of art.
I think there is a God consciousness. There is a single consciousness that we all exist from. And that's where we get those ideas from. That's where that comes from. You could be remembering things. You could be collaborating with things. Like, I mean, because you got to think if one person does something, and one person has one thing, and one person has one thing, and it all comes to the same place. You're not necessarily remembering it because you did it, but your consciousness did.
My personal belief on the whole matter is that everything is predestined. This interview, this conversation, everything I've ever created. I like to feel, my ego wants to make me feel like I'm creating it, that I've done all this. But I actually believe it's a path that was set up out at the Big Bang, and that I have no control over whatsoever. That I'm like a leaf in a stream, and all the things in my life are gonna happen, and I don't really get a say in it. I like to pretend that I do, and I work at things, but I think that whole working at things is predestined. I don't think I really have a choice in that. All of time already exists, and we're just perceiving it as going forward, but it's really all there.
We can, get exactly whatever that consciousness would be sending us, but I think we have somewhat of a filter based on what we go through in this life, essentially, what we learn, and what ideas are presented at the time that we might not have control of. I think the way you're raised and just all the different things around you as you're growing up really change that filter too. Inspiration and creativity in itself is like our God. It is God for us. It's that greater power that just solves everything. If you have, some kind of feeling, something wrong, something you need to deal with, creativity, inspiration, art is what artists use. I mean, this is an artist speaking to artists. I mean, that's how you deal with it. That's how you get through it. That's how you live and move on or express yourself. That's why it's like that to us, because it's tangible. It's tangible. It's there. It's something we can see and feel. You know, and a lot of people say there isn't a God, and I can understand that too, but I'm not saying God in the sense of like a Christian or pagan or anything like that. It's just there's really no other word for it, because it's all-knowing, and it's there, and it solves everything in that instant.
If creativity is part of some larger force, are its effects on us consistent? Creativity doesn't seem to have any objective formula for how we experience it. Like the wind, we have to feel it to know it's there. Each breeze we feel on our face is like inspiration, hitting us hard and strong at times, then suddenly switching direction, slowing down, or stopping altogether. But we can explain the wind much better than we can explain inspiration.
Nature definitely can be super inspiring. Other artists can be super inspiring. Right now, I'm looking through a lettering book by an artist named Big Mees. And it's a cool way of trying to incorporate what other artists do with what I do. Like, I can look at their stuff and I'm like, oh, I like that way a letter looks, or I like the flow of that. You know, maybe I'll try something like that. You know, so it'll always push you a little further. In the essence of if you're a little stuck or if you're a little scared.
I've just always thought that, like, when you're being creative, you're just basically allowing yourself to be reflective in almost like literally like reflecting the things that are around you, the people that are around you. You cannot create creativity from scratch. It has to happen. That's why, like, sometimes when people talk about writer's block or painter's block or what have you, when you're sitting there trying to be creative, it's garbage. You kind of have to have something that will bounce off you, and what you can be is the mirror. And sometimes that's like a bit of a funhouse mirror. It'll reflect back kind of goofy looking, but really all you can do is reflect things back and put your own whatever on it. So you can't do that as a person sitting inside a room by yourself. You just can't.
We've all been around inspiring people, or like been in a group where there was an inspiring vibe. The more I can expose myself to environments that are positive and engaging, I find the more creative I'm able to be.
Often inspiration will hit me in the place where you don't want it, like I'll be taking a shower, or I'll be taking a crap, or I'll be in some place where I don't have pencil and paper to write something down, or I'll be driving my car.
It happens to me a lot in math when I'm teaching math. I get like really excited, and it's the end of the day, and I'm usually tired. But all of a sudden, I see a kid be like, oh, "I get it," and they're seeing creativity, and then it's just exciting.
It feels like you're one with the universe at that moment. That's that motivation, that inspiration. I think it's really it's energy. It's energy. It's on a motorcycle going 200 miles an hour down the desert, just dirt flying at you. It's crazy. It's an awesome feeling. It's like awesome feeling. It's a rush. It is a roller coaster in the pit of your stomach, in your chest.
And the one thing that people really want to do is they want to make a connection with somebody somehow. This is like a strange example, but you can meet someone who says, "Oh, I'm from Philadelphia. Oh, I have an aunt from Philadelphia." Where I'm not really sure, but you try to automatically like make a connection with somebody.
In our quest to reach out and make meaningful connections with others throughout our lives, do creative people experience difficulty finding people who share their unique way of thinking? Certain mental conditions such as addiction or depression seem to correlate with being highly creative, though there's no saying if one causes the other. Which leaves us with the question, does creativity affect our mental health, or does mental health affect our creativity?
I think every human experiences forms of addiction and depression and things like such. I've definitely experienced my fair share of those things. I have been a heavy drinker in the past, to the point where I acknowledged that drinking wasn't really the smartest way of doing things, and that drinking was actually a coping mechanism to deal with my depression. And my depression was about my situation, that I was making so much money but so unhappy still. Finally, with the help of my wife, was able to start fixing myself rather than drinking to fix myself, because I was just making myself an ass more often than not with the drinking. You know, I mean, I'd much rather make a painting that screams hatred than crash into a fucking brick wall in my car because I was drunk trying to deal with the hatred. If I could get it out on my canvas, that'd be the best way. And at this point in my life, definitely try to speak more with positive actions rather than impulsive behaviors.
A lot of creative people, I think, experiment with things, do things. The mind is an odd thing. You know, you're trying to figure it out, right? Everybody's got one, and there's no manual that you can go read about to know how it works. So, like, you try to, like, figure out what it is and how it works.
Being a truly creative individual is you're exploring and taking risks, not just simply, oh, I'm going to smear some stuff on a canvas, or I'm going to sit down with a guitar and bang a few chords together. It usually has to come from either a self-expression in the sense of something you have felt or want to feel.
They feel kind of outside of a circle. Like they feel like outsiders, and then often outsiders that would lead to depression or drug addiction.
To say that it's something that creative people do more than the rest of the population, I don't know if that's true or not. I think it's perceived that way because you hear in the media a lot about rock stars getting stoned and actors dying of overdoses and all this stuff. But there's a lot of regular, everyday garden variety folks that go through the same thing. So I don't know if it's necessarily true or not. I just think you hear about it more. That would be my guess.
You think someone like Hunter S. Thompson, who I don't think was creative or the way he was because of the drugs or the alcohol he did. I think that was as kind of a side project or a byproduct of him being that way. I don't think that made him creative. I don't think it's uses of drugs or alcohol or whatever will cause a creative effect. I think it's just a byproduct of the creative process.
A lot of tattoo artists I talk to say a lot of their creation comes from like fear and self-loathing and really negative things. And we create some of the most beautiful shit from those negative places. What could we create if we were coming from a positive place every time? So, I'm trying to implement that, making my life easier possibly.
Is it even possible to say that creative people experience any one thing more than anybody else? Generally, we think of visual artists, writers, or musicians as the ones who would experiment with their consciousness or experience mental illness. But creativity is used by everyone, not just artists. Is creativity an essential skill in every task or occupation?
I'm Jim Neal. I create things. I've done it ever since I've been old enough to have memory. It's kind of what I do.
Jim Neal has worked with computer science and engineering for much of his life, incorporating it into the various inventions he was involved with, such as the Touch ID sensor on the iPhone 5S.
I mean, I can't do any kind of a menial job or anything just the way they tell me to do it. If anything I do, I have to put my spin on it. I mean, everything. If I'm in traffic and I see things not moving smoothly, I'm figuring out a way that they could be better. There was nothing, and now there is something. Well, I mean, what's more that than engineering? I mean, right? You got two pieces of land with water between them, all of a sudden there's a bridge there. That's creativity. right? And that's what engineers do. My engineering creativity, that kind of creativity, that's not driven through pain. It's not pain driven, right? It's driven more from joy. In other words, I get this spark of an idea and it's like, ooh, I get to do that. So I remember when I first got into computers, it's like everything I got to write a computer program for, it's like, ooh, I get to solve this problem, right? Well, after doing it for 45 years, I'm over that. Because I got to the point where I realized there was pretty much no problem I couldn't solve if I put my mind through it. And so once I got to that point, it bored me.
My name is Ben Sharp, and I'm a musician.
Ben Sharp began taking flight lessons at a young age, and imagery of airplane parts filled the cover of his Cloudkicker album, Beacons. It's easy to imagine how inspiring it would be to soar through the clouds, but is there any room for creativity in something as procedural as flying an airplane?
Music is like 100% creativity. Like whatever you want to do, there's no rules. Whereas flying is very incredibly structured. There's very little room for creativity. So it almost forces you to find very small parts of creativity. It is creative, but in a much more restrictive way. But it's still a creative endeavor in some ways. But I think that since there's such a balance between like having the very procedural part of my life that happens when I go to work, and then balancing that out with the incredibly creative part of Cloudkicker, it helps me stay centered, and I think that it's important for me to have both.
If creativity can be useful in nearly everything, why don't we always see it that way? How come we usually consider the arts as creative work if we can be creative in nearly everything we do? Do we need to find a better way of teaching people how to embrace creativity? In order to teach it, we first have to think about how we discovered it on our own.
I've always been a free thinker, and I've always had a different way of viewing things, but I didn't just pick up tattoo or drawing simply. It wasn't something that just was like, oh yeah, here you go, this is easy. It was definitely tough for me. Yeah. But it works out, you know what I mean? I put in my effort, and now it comes way more frequently and with much less toil attached to it.
I've had music has been a major part of my life as long as I can remember. Just growing up listening, I used to always like to listen to oldies. For some reason, for whatever random thing happened, I don't know, I had 2 tape cassettes that I would just play all the time on my Walkman. When I was hanging out with my parents or we went out somewhere, I would always have my Walkman and my headphones, and it was Sgt. Pepper and then Best of the Beach Boys, and those were the 2 cassettes that I had.
I think that says a lot. I had that same Best of the Beach Boys that I wore out.
Oh my God, awesome. Good Vibrations.
Totally, and I sat there, I remember, I can visualize it in my head, in my surf trunks, with the boombox in front of me, learning all 6-part harmonies. So I
wasn't that advanced.
So then I could then teach it at the summer camp to the kids, and we could blow away the talent show. I was like, we're gonna rock the house. Good Vibrations.
It always came naturally, but I always wanted to have an edge, so I always tried to work harder at it. And I don't mean an edge like I want to be better than you. I mean an edge like I want to be better than myself. Because I naturally, just from writing in my head even, write stuff that might be a little bit past my range at the moment. And I have to do something to get better vocally, on guitar, on piano. And the cool thing is, though, when I learn these things that I've written in my head and they're harder, all of a sudden I'm that much better.
Can creativity even be taught? Maybe finding our own way of being creative helps us express ourselves most effectively. Creativity doesn't follow any formula or predictable path that we know of. So how do we teach someone to be creative?
I don't think you can teach what creativity is. I think you can teach a kid to tap into their creativity, though. Because if you taught creativity as a certain way, that's not creativity, right? That's the opposite of creativity. And everyone's creative in their own way.
That's the thing, yeah. I've experienced creativity in so many different ways, and every single one of them was creativity, so not one of them was wrong. But leading by example, I think, will always get us to the end where we're supposed to be.
You can teach certain techniques, and you can say, well, it might not even be considered teaching. It may be just considered, hey, this is what I do. Give it a shot. But I feel like you're born with a certain amount of it. I really do. I feel like you're born with actually a lot of it.
Or at least the motivation to create. You can, I guess, teach creation somewhat, but I feel like a lot of it is like internal. Some people might want to create different things or have a different process of creating depending on who they are or what they've grown up with.
When I was a little kid, I would play very creatively, and all children play creatively. But I think that aspect of myself didn't really go away entirely. Maybe that's where creativity comes from. It's probably the same thing that kids do.
I don't believe that you can teach someone about creativity. You gotta let them find out for themselves how creative or what makes them different from everybody else, because everybody in the world is different. And everybody has the way they create things. I write music to express my feelings. I write poetry to express what kind of situation I feel like I'm in, and that's basically my creativity. I don't think about it, I just do it, and that's how my creativity comes to play.
There's so many types of genius. There's so many types of creativity. Like, you don't have to be book smart to be smart. You can be musically smart, sports, anything.
Mongolians and Indians, which is where I spent most time teaching. I've actually spent more time teaching abroad than I have in America. Their creativity is not fostered in the classroom. Like, a teacher wants them to do something a certain way, and if they don't do it a certain way, they're like slapped on the wrist for it, in a sense. Like, if they want their name on their left hand side of the paper, and they put it on the right side of the paper, something as dumb as that. So they're always like, what do you want me to do, teacher? What do you want me to do, teacher? What do you want me to do, teacher? Because they're not allowed to be creative. A uniqueness is not acceptable there.
I feel like anybody and everybody is capable of creativity and that level of inspiration, but because of the lives that they lived, they have this filter that it's almost like they block it out. They don't believe in it. They don't think it's there, and because they don't see it, they don't want to see it, and they won't.
Destruction's actually become what we do. You know, that's the easy way out. Let's destroy shit. You know, let's make war. Not love, not peace, not happiness. If you cultivate creativity, then creativity is bound to grow. A lot of the time we don't cultivate creativity, we cultivate negativity and anger, fear-driven things, rather than, the beauty that comes from just allowing yourself to just be yourself.
What if we had one goal, one easily achievable oath that we could think of as a sort of mantra in order to make life better for ourselves and the people around us? Something that reminded us of the chain reaction that takes place when we inspire others with our creativity. What if we woke up thinking of our potential to inspire and create every day?
We're Secret Keeper, and we believe you should inspire and create every day.
My name's Laura Godfrey, and I believe we can inspire and create every day through young minds.
My name's Alicio, and I play in the band The Wilderness. I believe we should inspire and create every day.
My name is Robbie Rapole, and I believe you should inspire and create every day.
I'm Jim Neal, and I believe that we should inspire and create every day.
Hey, we're Conglom, and we believe you should inspire and create every day.
I believe that you should inspire and create in everything that you do.
My name is Ben Sharp. I feel like the more that we find ourselves and place ourselves in inspiring situations, the happier we are.
And that's just it. The key to unlocking happiness in yourself, and the key to ensuring the happiness of humanity, is to keep creating. Keep inspiring in every way you can, even the ways that aren't usually thought of as being creative. And in order to ensure the cycle of creation continues, We need to remember to nurture the natural creativity that we are all born with, to ensure that when we educate young minds, we create the creators.